Hello, welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We have another 3 stories for you today. As you wish. Do you want it done right, or do you just want deniability if someone tries to sue? And US Air Force supply problems. I need an antenna to fix a jet. They made me order the whole tale. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Alright, let's get started. Our first story. As you wish. For those who are too impatient to read to the end, winking face, a military commander has no one to blame when his micromanagement blows up in his face. This happened a couple or 3 decades ago in the military. I was in charge of the squadron budget and made sure all unit expenditures were proper, right funds account, and funds were available. It happened a couple or 3 decades ago in the military. I was in charge of the squadron budget and made sure all unit expenditures were proper, right funds account, and funds were available. I also had to make sure that our budget lasted the whole fiscal year. We got a new commander who was the worst micromanager I've seen in my 20-year career. I made an appointment for my initial budget brief and proceeded to lay out our current expenditures, funding available, and the plans to spend it all by the end of the fiscal year. My new commander then tells me that he wants oversight on every penny spent in the squadron. I said I could do that, but I needed some clarification. He said very condescendingly, "Did you not hear me, Sergeant? I said every penny. I will approve every penny spent in this squadron before it is spent." I said, "Yes, sir. Do you want me to send paper requests or email them to you?" He said email would be sufficient and dismissed me. I knew exactly what to do. I called all the bosses who ran the different shops and told them what the commander had said and that I had no choice but to comply. None of them were happy, and a couple of them caught the tone in my voice and figured out what I was doing. I even told the squadron chief what was going to happen, and he told me that he would have my back. So, I took all 27 spending accounts down to $0 available. Even the most critical aircraft parts couldn't be ordered until they sent me an email, which I forwarded to the commander. He never once responded. It took 2 weeks for everything to hit the fan. It was taking longer than I thought it would take, and I was starting to get nervous. We were in a staff meeting, and the commander was pissed. He had just gotten his ass chewed by the colonel because of all the broken airplanes waiting on parts to be bought. He turned to the first flight chief and asked him why he had so much equipment that wasn't getting fixed. The chief said, with a straight dead poker face, "Sarge. _______ won't approve us buying any parts." The commander whipped his head toward me and angrily asked what the problem was. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Sir, I sent those requests to you 2 weeks ago." You could see the color drain from his face as he quickly looked down. "We'll talk about this after the meeting." I kept my straight face and I swear that I heard more than one muffled chuckle from the chiefs at the conference table. When the meeting was over, the commander told me to meet him in his office. The chief that threw me under the bus winked at me and smiled. I walked in right behind the boss and reported formally. We normally only do this if we are in trouble or getting praise, but this guy insisted on it from everyone every time. "Mike, apparently, I am now on a first-name basis. You seem to have a pretty firm grasp on the budget and what the flights need. I think you can approve the normal day-to-day stuff and just bring the big things to me." "Yes sir" was all I could say without busting out in laughter. Every request was approved and ordered within an hour, and I was never questioned again. Chieftain equals chieftain. A master sergeant is the highest enlisted rank in the US Air Force. I found out later that the chiefs had all gotten together and decided to go along with my idea. They could have stopped it immediately but decided to teach the commander a lesson. Somehow, the colonel that chewed my commander's ass had gotten word of what was going on and decided enough was enough, but he still didn't let on that he knew the real reason. Apparently, he thought my commander needed some education too. Our next story. Do you want it done right, or do you just want deniability if someone tries to sue? Many years ago, I got a temp job at a local soap shop. You know, the fancy kind where it costs £5 for a bar of handmade soap. The manager didn't like me. I did things thoroughly and methodically, not quickly and good enough for now. I also have a very good memory, and I remember things people say and do, especially if those things don't add up. The manager would exaggerate things that made her look good and conveniently forget things that didn't go her way. I thought she had made a genuine mistake, so I corrected her once and she never forgave me. It was time for the monthly deep clean, and I was tasked with doing the stairs. The shop had a metal spiral staircase which led up to the storeroom, and we had to go up and down it with massive jugs of warm water so customers could try the products. Given the nature of the products, there were also soap flakes everywhere and they got stuck in this high traffic area. There was about 1/4 of a centimeter of soap caked onto each step. The manager explained in front of most of the staff how important this job was and that it had to be done right. People could get hurt, you see, and you don't want that, do you, Obsidian Winter? She spent more time than was necessary making it very clear that if someone got hurt, then I would be to blame. It was also the most isolating and tedious job. It was obvious that this was revenge for my humiliating the manager. Fine. I went into my little world and started scraping. She wanted all the soap gone. I would remove every scrap of soap. Half an hour later, I had done a couple of steps and I was told that I was being too slow. She suggested that not all of the soap needed to be removed, only enough to make it less slippery. I replied that, no, I was doing it properly. If this was a safety issue, I needed to get rid of all the soap. I reminded her that she didn't want anyone to get hurt. The manager continued to criticize me for another half an hour, until she had no choice but to swap me with someone else. She had publicly made a big deal about how important the job was, so now she couldn't backtrack and leave it. A few days later, she spilled a full basin of water down the stairs. The 4 steps I cleaned were safe to walk on. All the steps she had assigned to someone else, another 6 or so, were slippery as all hell and she slid down the stairs on her back. She was off work for several weeks, and when she came back, she tried to blame me for not doing the job properly. I reminded her that she slipped on the stairs, which were cleaned by someone else, and that I was pulled off the task for being too thorough. Fortunately, it was a temp job, and I moved on after a couple of months. She still works there, and I've noticed that none of the other staff lasted more than a year or 2. And our last story. US Air Force supply problems. I need an antenna to fix a jet. They made me order the whole tail. In the early 1980s, I was in the US Air Force. My job title was Avionics Com/Nav Specialist. Translation: I fixed radios and navigation equipment on the A-7D and later on the A-10A aircraft. One of the A-7D aircraft that I was called on to fix had been struck by lightning on the tail. The upper 12 inches of the tail is the UHF radio antenna. It was totally destroyed by the lightning strike. My unit at the time was on temporary duty, TDY, at Barbers Point Naval Air Station in Hawaii for a 30-day exercise. I was just a young pup at the time, 19 or 20 years old I think, but I was the only com/nav guy that was on the TDY. So, I needed a new antenna to fix the jet, and I ordered one from our supply guy. They tell me that no antennas are available anywhere in the US Air Force. Okay, so what do? I ask. They tell me to order the next higher assembly, which is basically the tail of the aircraft. I argue for a while, trying to explain how stupid that is, but I don't get anywhere, and they even get nasty with me. At that time, the Cold War was going strong, and any aircraft that was not mission capable was a very bad thing. A grounded USAF jet on a TDY at a naval air base was even worse. It had to be fixed yesterday. I called my boss back at our main base in Louisiana to explain the situation. He tells me to go ahead and follow the supply guy's recommendation, which I do. It couldn't have been more than 3 hours before I was told to report to my maintenance officer, the officer in charge of aircraft maintenance, wanting to know if I had ordered an A-7D tail assembly. I have to say, as a young airman first class, talking to a major, I was kind of scared. I explained the whole chain of events, omitting who I specifically spoke with at our home base. The major looked like he was going to explode in anger. I'm thinking, I'm a dead man. Instead, he busted out laughing. I mean, laughing to the point he couldn't talk, laughing so hard that it looked like he was in pain, tears in his eyes, etc. After what seemed like forever, at least it seemed that way, he was able to actually speak again. The major told me that the way the supply group worked has always been a problem. What I did just brought it all out into the open with all the attention it got. He actually thanked me. I got my antenna 2 days later. Edit 1. I think that this was the beginning of using a computer inventory system for the AF. It was a train wreck at first. There was just a bunch of crappy code and errors. The person who insisted that I order the next higher assembly was just doing what his superior and/or computer were telling him to. Whoever rolled out the system before it was ready got their ass reamed. A jet was grounded for close to 4 days for no reason other than no one could use common sense. This was a problem that had been brewing between supply and the aircraft maintenance group for quite some time, as I understand. This event was just such a ridiculous event that the supply group had to scrap the computer system for a few years. Come to find out, the part was actually available in Hawaii. Well, that's all for this video. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.